This episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast is brought to you by MIGA, your medical indemnity partner. Whether you're starting out in your career or have decades of experience, MIGA helps you thrive with support that goes beyond insurance. Enjoy travel benefits like complimentary travel insurance and Qantas points on your membership, plus education, medico-legal support, access to career coaching and wellbeing resources. Visit miga.com.au to learn more. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit miga.com.au. Burnout isn't just exhaustion. It's carrying too much for too long. Heidi takes the administrative load off clinicians so you can focus on what matters, patient care. Recovery starts with removing what drains you. Try Heidi for free at heidihealth.com.
Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast. Today, I am delighted to have a guest on my podcast, and I know it's been a number of months since I've had a guest. Today, I'm welcoming Anthony Mennillo, who is the Head of Claims and Legal Services at MIGA, medical indemnity provider here in Australia. And MIGA, I am delighted to tell you, is one of the sponsors of the Burnout Recovery Podcast. So with that big mouthful there, Anthony, welcome, and it's great to have you on the pod.
Thank you, Joe. It's a real pleasure to be here and talk about really important issues that you do on your podcast. So thank you.
My audience may not know much about you just so far, and I would love if you could introduce yourself, tell us a bit about your background, your role at MIGA, and perhaps share a bit about your personal journey that's shaped how you approach supporting doctors in your work. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Joe. I've been fortunate, I would say, to be working at MIGA for close to 22 years. I was in private practice in a law firm for about 5 years before that, and I went through a bit of a moment in my professional life where I thought, I'm not sure if I wanted to be a lawyer too much longer, and certainly not one in private legal practice. And I knew my predecessor here at MIGA, Cheryl McDonald, at the time, and she said, look, while you're deciding what your next career choice is, I need some help. I think you'd be great working with doctors and when you come on board. And I thought, okay, that sounds like a good plan. And my plan was a 5-year transition out of law altogether. But one thing that I really found when I joined MIGA at the time was the satisfaction in helping doctors, particularly doctors at the time. That's all we insured at that time, through some really difficult situations and working closely with them. And the variety and interesting work that this is. And 5 years has turned into 22 years. And 2 years ago, Cheryl resigned from MIGA, and I took over as head of claims and legal services, and now I manage a team of about 20 solicitors here in Adelaide, where I'm based, and interstate. So it's been an interesting journey, and one for me where we talk about burnout and burnout for doctors, which I've seen, and seeing the worst of it, but also seeing some good outcomes as well. And I think from me personally, about 18 years ago, I sort of had my own burnout experience when I was diagnosed with MS, and it was one of those spine-tingling, shattering events, devastating events in my life, and sort of caused me to reassess everything in my life, including my professional life. And I was very grateful, had a very supportive network. After it took me a while to get through the devastation of the diagnosis, and I almost quit work because of it. We had a great supportive employer. I didn't disclose it to too many people, but there were a couple of people, my direct report and the CEO knew, and they were fantastic, and have always been fantastic and supported me in whatever I needed. And, then had the family support, and it really helped me get through it. And I think in some ways now I'm sort of better equipped to help doctors through my own personal experience. Not that I'm a counsellor by any stretch of the imagination, but I can talk through what helped me and, hopefully make those suggestions to the doctors as well. So, yeah, that's in a nutshell, what's led me to be here where I am now.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that and, that personal angle of unexpected, significant life events that can come through for any of us when we never expect them.
Yeah.
And the maybe discomfort initially or the need to ask for help as one of your strategies in, I guess, not only surviving but thriving and continuing many years in the same workplace, going through the ladder in the workplace as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was something, and I think this is something that resonates with a lot of professionals, particularly the male doctors, that what I did was, which was not a good thing, was to internalize everything. Stress was something I managed, and, you don't get help, you don't get professional help. And one of the things that I did in my personal journey was, seek out professional help. I saw and continue to see the psychologist, just to bounce, what I'm going through. And it's something that I never did before that, and it's helped me. And it's something that we often talk to our doctors about. We do have a practitioner support service that is used infrequently, but when used by our doctors and our members, that it's highly valued, and that's getting that support, not just learning to cope and manage it yourself, is so important. And obviously coupled with that is your family and friends support network and colleagues, and being brave enough to share those experiences with them. And I think that applies to anyone, doctors, lawyers, any profession, any person. Will be something that I continually encourage people to engage with.
Yeah. No, it's great. Really good. So, by the sounds of it, you've certainly talked to a lot of doctors through the years. You have an extensive team who are there to support your members of MIGA. And you've seen firsthand the serious mental health impacts that complaints can have on doctors.
Yeah.
So how do you and your team help doctors navigate these challenging situations, and what role does MIGA play beyond legal defence?
Yeah, great questions, Joe. We see a lot. So we have on average about 140 contacts with our team every week. And a good portion of that is the complaint. So whether it's a complaint from a patient directly, whether it's a complaint to the regulator, APRA, or the Health Complaints Commission around the country, what we see, particularly with the complaints to the regulators, our doctors or our members have a range of emotional responses to it. Some will just accept it as part of practice, and practice in this environment and the environment we're in. There are some practitioners that take it extremely personally, even what we regard as a very minor complaint. The doctor feels that it's going to be the end of their practicing career, when we know it's not. And I think the benefit of our experience, we've got some really experienced lawyers in our team, to be able to talk them through, to say, this is not going to be the end of your practice. We'll get through this. Then there's the other extreme where there are some very serious complaints made, and our job is to talk them through, to say, look, this is serious, and we're going to support you through this, and we're going to get the best possible outcome. Now, that might mean a suspension or cancellation of registration, and we're talking about sexual misconduct, serious prescribing misconduct. It's and they are very much the sort of small percentage of complaints that the regulator sees. But what we do with the majority is at a very low level, what we regard as low level. But we can reassure the doctor from that perspective. And unfortunately, there's still that cohort of doctors, particularly at the serious end, where they take it very personally and they don't have the support networks in place. And unfortunately, we've had experiences over my 22 years here that unfortunately a small number have taken their life as a result of the stress of the complaint and what it might mean for them, despite the network of support that we've given them and provided. And that's a really sad and tragic outcome. It's the last thing that anyone wants. And we try to avoid that as much as possible. But we do have those support networks, and I mentioned before the practitioner support service, which we have, which sort of works alongside our claims process and our claims team, and it's outside and independent of the claims, but we facilitate either a peer review, so someone not a lawyer, a doctor that they can talk to, the doctor can talk to. So just to talk it through, saying, whether they can say, I've been through this myself and you'll be fine. And so there's that level of peer support, but also there's some practitioners that need professional help, and we can and do facilitate a link between the practitioner and a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And we fund that to a certain level. And as I said, it's thankfully not frequently used, but the doctors that do use it have told us that it's been a huge benefit for them, just to help them navigate their way through the complaints process. So it's multifactorial. We can talk to them about the process and what they can expect, but we can't talk to them about their emotional support. And we often encourage and always encourage them to speak to a colleague if they can, if they're comfortable, speak to the family, a spouse, a friend, and then use the practitioner support service if they need it. And I like to think that those components have helped a lot of our doctors through some difficult times.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. One thing that I always checked in on with clients who I was starting coaching with as a burnout coach was that they had their own GP as well, because we know so many doctors globally often don't have their own medical practitioner that they might check in on regularly. And I guess that's another avenue that you encourage your members.
And, we did a lot of, there's been a couple of examples, thankfully rarely, where I've spoken to a doctor on the phone. I've had some real concern about their mental well-being, such that I thought that they might do something drastic. And I'm certainly not equipped to deal with that, other than to identify. And, thankfully I've had Dr. Roger Sexton on the hotline for me, that I've been able to ring him at short notice to say, I've got this doctor, can you help them out? And he's got on the phone, put in support networks, got them to come in and arrange the time to see them, whether they're here, or arrange a colleague in an interstate to help them out. And that's been great. But I think one of the things I've always heard Roger say is the importance of having your own medical practitioner, GP, to look after you. And it's something that whenever doctors come before the medical board and there might be a health-related issue or a component of health in relation to a conduct issue, one of the things the board always is keen to hear is, do you have your own GP? How do you look after your own health? And so it's important for doctors not to use the complaints process to go and get a GP, to sort of be proactive in that. And that's really, really important.
For sure. Yeah, great. So let's just clarify, what else does MIGA do beyond legal defence? Can you just tell the listeners what else is in the suite of tools that you have?
So we do a lot of work with risk education, and so a lot of our risk education team take the data out of our claims, identifying what are the pain points for our practitioners that lead to complaints being made, and then tailor their education program based on that. And we have one of our team members who's not a lawyer and a former nurse, and quite every now and then, or actually more often than not now, the board are keen to impose education conditions on registration, even for lower level complaints. And our team member, Hallie, works with the doctor to say, well, here's some education that MIGA has. Why don't you think about doing that? That's going to help you, and it's going to help in how you respond to this complaint. So we do a lot of work through risk education. We're really proud of risk education, the program that we offered, because we look at, well, what the pain points, and it probably often comes down to communication. there's two aspects, communication and doctors' wellbeing. And we've done a lot of work on those two areas to educate the profession. And so there's that, the practitioner support service. We're also advocates for, at a higher level, to any changes that the medical board want to introduce that we think might impact adversely for our practitioners. We do a lot of advocacy work, making submissions to the board, to AHPRA, to the complaints bodies, to Medicare, that ultimately try to help our doctors as much as possible. So that all sits outside of claims, but and my team, but we are intricately involved in the submissions that are made as well. So I'd like to think we do a lot of work to benefit our doctor members, whether they've got a claim or holistically as well.
Yes, yeah. We were just talking about that before we started recording around your advocacy to AHPRA and the medical board of no notifications around that Christmas, New Year time when the support services are not as available as they are for the rest of the calendar year, and being mindful and considerate and just putting a pause on those notifications. So I think that's wonderful.
Often what was happening was that AHPRA, in terms of, and no disrespect to them, but they didn't often have regard to the practitioner's well-being in receiving a complaint the day before Christmas or between Christmas and New Year, and at a time where they might be isolated for whatever reason. And we've certainly had in the past doctors in a panic ringing us up and quite stressed out by it. So one of the things we've done when working with AHPRA at a higher level was to say, I'm not sure if you realise this, but this is the impact this is having, even at the very low level complaints. So please don't do that. And so that they introduced this shutout period where they wouldn't send out complaints. I think it's very early December is their shutout day, which has been helpful. Unfortunately, it means that at this time of year when everything reopens, you get a flood of complaints that they've been sitting on. But it's much better to be able to manage that with a practitioner at this time rather than a time when they might be isolated. I think that's really important. Yeah,
great. And obviously you support practitioners at various different stages of their careers. And so we in our briefing call, you observed that junior doctors often feel the pressure to always be right and are reluctant to ask for help, whereas consultants might face complaints when they're performance managing a team member, and that might be perceived as bullying and harassment. So with a range of members across their training years and different specialties as well, how does MIGA tailor its support differently across these career stages? And why does the personalised approach matter so much?
Yeah, it is really important because there's similar issues, but there are idiosyncrasies depending on the level of the doctor. And the point you made about junior doctors is that there's often that reluctance and that reluctance to seek help, the reluctance to say I'm struggling with the workload, and all that does is build pressure, and then it might lead to a mistake or a performance management issue that they then come to us and say, I feel really stressed about this process. I've got to have an interview with my consultant and HR, and so we tailor it to say, well, what sort of support networks are in place for you as a junior doctor? What sort of supervision has been in place? And then and quite often not quite often, but occasionally they'll say, as a junior doctor, saying, well, I feel that my consultant, my supervisor, is bullying me and harassing me, and this is not fair. And so then we look at the other side of things, and we have members who are consultants, and not always, but every now and then it's in the same case. So we're helping the junior doctor, and one of our other team members with appropriate Chinese walls in place to protect confidentiality is helping the consultant, because the consultant is having to deal with a complaint that they are bullying or harassing a junior staff member. And it's different because you're at that level, and we're aware of it because this is always a senior practitioner, experienced practitioner in a consultant role. And they are quite affronted by an allegation that what they regard as performance management and similar to how they were brought up in a hospital environment when they were a junior doctor. It was a school of hard knocks. That they're just doing the same thing for their junior doctors and trying to teach them, how to be safe in practice with them, and to be to have a complaint that they are bullying and harassment. They take that very personally, and there's the same reactions in a different context from the junior doctor and the senior doctor, and so we have to manage that, and we manage that by being aware of it. We know what these issues are for you as a consultant. We know what issues are for you as a junior doctor, and trying to help them navigate those issues, and to overcome the perception that they aren't a good doctor anymore, or they're not a good doctor and they will never be a good doctor as a junior doctor. So it is, we do tailor it, but there are similar issues, but just different considerations.
Yeah. No, very good. Yeah, so important. And we've got, my husband read out to me something about our aging population and the stats by 2031, which is not many years away, and the absolute increase in demand on healthcare. And so it's really important that our clinicians are supported, whatever stage they are as they're going through, so that quitting doesn't seem like the easiest answer or the easiest solution.
Absolutely. And I think the issues for the junior doctor and the consultant are exactly the same, because the junior doctor feels, I want to stop because I don't think I'm good enough, and I'll never be good enough. And the consultant says, well, maybe I'm not good enough anymore. It's a hard system to navigate sometimes, I think. And then you've got the pressure of the health system that you just mentioned. And that just adds to the stress for these doctors. And I do feel for them. And, it's a hard environment to work in, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Even more reason to have the support networks.
That's it, because you've got the individuals probably with the perfectionist mindset and people-pleasing as well, and then maybe procrastinating the difficult thing, whether that's making the phone call or whether that's changing the things that they need to change in the workplace. So you've got the individual factors and then the system factors that just wants everything out of everybody, and not always much space for recovery time. There's so many angles we could go on.
And I think unfortunately, social media, everything becomes out in the public forum. So, the public or people that are part of the health system, they're very quick to, provide feedback, negative feedback, out on social media. And, the doctors have very little control over that. But again, that's another aspect that is taken so personally, but understandably so personally, and it's very hard to control that as well. So, you put all that in the mix, and it is a stressful environment for doctors to work in, which is why I'm glad we've got the support that we're able to give them, but also hopefully the other support networks that they should have.
Yeah, great. So I'm curious about what you do for managing wellbeing in your team, because I'm sure with your team, they haven't gone into this work as doctors being exposed to actually quite traumatizing situations that many of us do see along our training. So it might be sometimes quite shocking what your staff members hear about. So how do you support your team with emotionally challenging cases, potentially on the daily by the number of phone calls it sounds like you have per week? And what wellbeing approaches have you implemented at MIGA to prevent burnout?
Yeah, and look, this was something that really came to the forefront of my mind only in the last 18 months. Like I said, I've been doing this for 22 years, so I've developed a bit of an immunity in terms of what I hear doctors report to me. And I do remember, when my wife was pregnant with our two children, listening to obstetricians talk about the obstetric cases that went horribly wrong and catastrophic outcomes for babies. When my wife was pregnant, we're going through that. I absorbed a lot of that stress internally, which I realise now was probably not a good thing. But one of our solicitors, who's does some creative writing in her pastime, she presented to the company on vicarious trauma and what she experiences, and it really hit me personally in terms of what she was going through, in terms of her day-to-day work, what she talked to the doctors about, and it really sparked a fire in me to say, well, I know it's not just this person, that's probably the whole team, and it started we always have regular check-ins with all our team, and we have team meetings and we talk about, this is an interesting case, and sometimes it's that interesting case which is really catastrophic or bad outcome, but we talk it through, and I think that's a big part of helping us all cope. But we've also, directly on the back of my colleagues' brave presentation to the company, we're introducing some formal vicarious trauma training, not only for people in our team, because there's people in other teams, in other departments that also experience that as well. So, and we've got things like the EAP that's available, and that's a really good source of external help that the company provides and is used frequently. And I always encourage my team to use that, and on a purely confidential basis. But I think we have a great network of teams where I've hopefully created an environment where people want to talk to each other about the claims, the stress of the claim and what they're dealing with. And, I've been doing this for 22 years, so I have a level of experience to say, look, I've had this sort of claim. This is how I dealt with it. This is how I cope with it, and offer suggestions. And hopefully, we've got a lot of experienced lawyers now in our team that can share that, and that's been beneficial. But I think I'm acutely aware of it now that we can be doing more and are trying to do the best we can to provide those support networks for our own team members. And that is also, sometimes I forget about the administrative support staff that might not be speaking directly with doctors, but they're often reading the file because they have to do something, and that contains really sensitive information. So it's not just the legal team, it's the whole team that provides that level of, we need to support.
Yes. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get clear on what proactive strategies do you recommend doctors implement to minimize their risks of complaints in the future, rather than one happens and then we deal with responding to that complaint? What can they do proactively?
Look, I think that, and I will say this, every presentation I give to doctors and through our risk education program, there's probably it comes down to two clear things: communication and looking after yourself. And on the communication, that is multifactorial. That is, communicating with your patients, particularly when things go wrong. Keeping those lines of communications with your patients. Now, you may not prevent a claim or complaint, but our data, and there's lots of studies out there that say, patients like doctors that communicate with them, and they're less likely to sue or complain against those doctors that they like, and they like the doctors that communicate with them. And one of the things that we're always encouraging is, even in the most catastrophic mistakes where the doctor has made a mistake, is being open and honest with the patient. And I remember a case, this is early on in my career here, where it was a radiologist that did a procedure where he had injected a substance in the patient's back as part of the procedure, and it leaked, and this patient became paraplegic. And the doctor had obviously felt very bad about it. It was just one of the complications of the procedure. But he, out of his own pocket, purchased a wheelchair. He spent a lot of time with the family, and they were very religious families. So they all the positive aspects came out, and that family never sued the doctor. He remained in contact with them. That's one example. We do have other examples where, the patient still sues even though the doctor does their best, but it does create that environment where communication is the key all the way through, but also communication with colleagues, with your support networks when things go wrong. So that aspect and looking after yourself looking after your health, to have your own GP, get out and exercise, have professional support, all those things that, help me personally, that helps plenty of other doctors and practitioners out there. Those are the keys to, maintaining one, good health, two, good practice, but also being able to cope when things don't go perfectly well. And that happens in life. And that happens in professional practice for these doctors. And, that's what we're here for in terms of the medico-legal support that we can provide. But there's plenty of other support that the doctor needs to keep in mind as well. So, in a nutshell, communication and looking after yourself is how you prevent complaints and claims.
Yeah, that's great. No, really good. So I always invite my guests to share where my listeners can find out more about, where you're based and how they might reach out if they're curious about becoming a member with MIGA. What would you like to suggest there, please?
So you can contact you can go directly to our website. Our website has great information on not only joining as a member, but risk education, some great resources there in terms of complaints management and various aspects of medico-legal topics. And that's www.miga.com.au. They can call us, our customer service team, great support team that can help with any of their insurance needs. And if they are a member out there and they need support, I always encourage them to speak to us. I think one of the keys is that, and key things that we've learned is that doctors that are proactive to say, identifying things that might become a problem, that are not yet a problem, getting in contact with us and talking it through very often prevents the complaint down the track.
That's great.
Yeah.
No, thanks so much, Anthony. You've really summarised with a lot of great final messages there. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Not much more than I've already spoken about. I think the more we talk about these topics, I think what you're doing is a really great thing, because I think making people aware and allowing them the environment to say, it's okay if I'm struggling and I can get the support and I'm not the only one out there. And I think that's really, really important. So, no, thank you for your time as well.
Oh, it's been a pleasure to have you on here, and that message getting out there to the listeners again. You're not alone. You're not without support. There's people around your medical indemnity provider, hopefully, and MIGA certainly has great resources as well for all of their members too. So communication really matters, and your own well-being as well, just to reiterate some of the points you said there. So great working with you. Thanks so much for your time today, Anthony. I'll put the links on the show notes of how people can reach out to MIGA, and I wish you a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, Joe. All the best.
Ready to take the next step in your burnout recovery journey? Visit drjoebraid.com for free resources, all 150 plus podcast episodes, and information about my keynote speaking. Links are in the show notes. Your well-being matters. Protect the asset that is you. If you're a clinician trying to protect your energy this year, hear this. We all know how the invisible work drains us. Those endless notes, follow-ups, and admin tasks that happen after every patient leaves. That's where Heidi comes in, an AI care partner that quietly handles the documentation while you stay focused on what matters. Patient care. It's not another system to learn. It's support that actually reduces your cognitive load. Try Heidi for free today at HeidiHealth.com. Be your best you. Rely on MIGA for your protection and support, serving doctors for over 125 years through insurance, education, medical legal advice, and member benefits designed to help you thrive and succeed. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit miga.com.au.